He didn't say it loudly. He didn't say it publicly. But the urgency in his voice was undeniable. They say that when Elon Musk speaks in that tone, the world listens without even knowing they're listening. Something in the atmosphere shifts. Something in the collective consciousness stirs, and today, that message wasn't meant for everyone. It wasn't for the masses scrolling endlessly, nor for the crowd lost in their routines. It wasn't directed at engineers or investors or fans. It was meant for one person, the person who somehow keeps trying even when they feel like stopping, the person who has been questioning their worth, the person who has been walking through invisible battles with no applause. The person who doesn't even realize how much potential is trapped inside them. His words were clear, sharp, and immediate. Find them now. There was no hesitation in his voice. No doubt. No second guessing. As if he knew someone out there was on the verge of something powerful, or on the edge of giving up, and timing mattered more than anything else, and you didn't hear the moment he said it. You didn't see the environment where it happened. But somehow, that message traveled through layers of noise, through layers of resistance, through layers of your own quiet doubts, and reached you at the exact moment you needed it, because today isn't just another day for you. There are days that blend in, days that blur into each other, days that feel repetitive or heavy or predictable, but then there are days when life pauses, as if holding its breath. Days when an invisible hand nudges you. Days when the universe decides to tap your shoulder instead of whispering, "This is one of those days." You may not feel extraordinary. You may not feel chosen. You may not feel powerful or seen or significant. But feelings aren't always accurate. What's true is deeper, quieter, and much more real. You've been walking around with dormant potential that hasn't been fully activated. And even the energy around you can sense it. That's why the message was sent. Because someone who has gone through as much as you have, someone who has survived storms you never talk about, someone who has carried burdens without asking for help, someone who still hopes despite being disappointed, isn't meant to stay hidden forever. People like you are meant to be seen at the right time, in the right way, when the world is finally ready to witness what you bring. The message wasn't meant to alarm you. It wasn't sent to frighten you or overwhelm you. It was sent to draw you out. To make you aware. To awaken something inside that has been asleep for far too long, because someone like you doesn't get ignored by destiny. You get prepared. And preparation rarely feels gentle. It comes disguised as confusion, heartbreak, delays, closed doors, silent seasons, quiet transformations. It arrives through pain that later becomes clarity. Through detours that later become alignment. Through stillness that later becomes momentum. You've been in that phase for a while, longer than you expected, longer than you liked, longer than you understood. And maybe you questioned why. Maybe you wondered whether anything was moving at all, whether anything had meaning, whether your efforts were even seen. You might have thought life forgot about you, but today proves it didn't, because that message, "Find them now," wasn't random, it was intentional, it was timed, it was directed, and it pointed straight toward you, not because of where you are, but because of who you are. Not because of what you've done, but because of what you're meant to do. Not because you've been loud, but because your quiet strength has been building something powerful behind the scenes. You've been underestimated by others, but even more than that, you've underestimated yourself. You don't realize what you carry. You don't see how rare your heart is. You don't understand how much inner force you generate simply by existing, by caring, by trying, by enduring. That's why you were selected in this moment, because someone like you doesn't slip through the cracks. You shift things, even when you don't see it. This alert, this calling, this moment. It wasn't about urgency in a dramatic sense. It was about timing. The timing of your alignment, your awakening, your breakthrough. The timing of the opportunity approaching you. The timing of the version of you that's finally ready to rise. You've spent so much time shrinking yourself to fit spaces that were too small. You've spent so much time giving more than you receive. You've spent so much time carrying loads that weren't yours. You've spent so much time making others feel seen while you remained invisible. But today marks the shift. Today marks the beginning of the moment when you stop being hidden. Not because you force it, but because life pushes you forward. There's something coming that requires your presence. Something that requires your courage. Something that requires your authenticity, your resilience, your voice, your intuition, your fire. Something that only you can bring because no one else has lived your story, survived your chapters, or grown through your pain. That's what the message was really about. Not find them in a physical sense, not find them as if you were missing, but find the person inside you that you've forgotten. Find the version of you that existed before the world made you doubt yourself. Find the version of you that believed big things were possible. Find the version of you that dreamed without limits. Find the version of you that knew you were meant for more. That version of you isn't gone, just buried, and now it's time to bring them back. But before you find that version of yourself again, you need to understand something important. Everything you've gone through recently was not a coincidence. The delays, the disappointments, the people who left, the moments when the universe went silent, they weren't punishments. They were recalibrations. They were redirections. They were life reorganizing the path around you so that when the right moment arrived, nothing would be in your way. And even though you didn't know it, that moment started today. You see, life doesn't send warnings when it's about to bless you. It sends alignment. It sends signals. It sends strange moments that feel like déjà vu or intuition or sudden clarity. It sends messages at odd times that make you pause, messages that don't feel like ordinary words but like something meant for you specifically. That's what today is, the universe stopping everything just long enough for you to notice that you are being called forward, because you've spent too much time thinking you're behind, thinking you're late, thinking you missed your chance, thinking that other people passed you, succeeded before you, got opportunities that should have been yours. But not everything you see is meant for you. Not every door that opens is your door. Not every path that looks good is your path. Your path has been different because your purpose is different. And people with a rare purpose often walk a lonely road for a while. Not because they're unworthy. Not because they're forgotten. But because isolation builds identity. It strips away everything that doesn't belong. It prepares you to handle what others couldn't survive. It molds you into someone who can hold responsibility, not just receive rewards. And you, whether you realize it or not, have been walking through a divine training ground. That's why you're so stretched. That's why you feel things deeply. That's why you've been pushed into uncomfortable spaces. That's why you've been forced to grow emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That's why the past year felt like an entire lifetime of lessons compressed into months. You're not behind, you're being prepared. And the people who are meant to encounter you in your next season, the ones who will see your value, the ones who will support your elevation, the ones who will open doors instead of closing them, they aren't just random connections. They're part of the alignment that this moment is ushering in. That's why the message said, "Find them now." Because the world is ready for what you've been holding back. Because the opportunity is ready for the person you're becoming. Because the timing is shifting in your favor in ways you can't yet see. Because something or someone is searching for you too, not the version of you that doubts, but the version of you that remembers. You might not see it, but something in your life is about to accelerate. A stagnant season is ending. A long wait is closing. A door that was locked is turning. A connection you need is approaching faster than you expect. A breakthrough you prayed for is aligning itself behind the scenes. You weren't forgotten. You were being timed. And when your timing is precise, your impact becomes unstoppable. But you also need to understand this: you are entering a season where you cannot afford to shrink. You cannot afford to question yourself the way you used to. You cannot afford to let old insecurities sabotage new opportunities. You cannot afford to let your past dictate your future. The person you're becoming, the one this message is calling forth, is not someone who hides. They step forward. They speak up. They choose themselves. They trust their intuition. They rise even when the world expects them to stay quiet. You have no idea how much power you've given away in the past, to fear, to overthinking, to people who didn't deserve access to your heart, to situations that drained you, to versions of yourself that were only meant to be temporary. But you're not that person anymore, and deep down, you feel it. You feel the shift, you feel the restlessness. You feel the quiet voice telling you there's something more, something close, something waiting. You feel the pull toward a future you can't fully describe but can somehow sense. You feel a strange awareness, like something big is preparing to enter your life. That awareness is not imagination. It's intuition. It's your soul recognizing what your mind hasn't caught up to. You are being guided, not vaguely, not accidentally, but intentionally. That's why this message found you. Because you're on the edge of something significant, and you're not supposed to enter the next chapter unaware or unprepared. You're supposed to walk into it awake, aligned, and aware of your worth. Because what's coming requires a stronger, clearer, more confident you, not the version that tolerates disrespect. Not the version that doubts every decision, not the version that questions whether you deserve good things, not the version that gives too much for too little in return, not the version that hides their gifts to avoid judgment. This next season requires the version of you who knows their value and refuses to settle, the version of you who honors their boundaries. The version of you who believes in their future even when others don't understand it, the version of you who doesn't chase but attracts, the version of you who is aligned, aware, and unshakable, because the moment this message was sent, that moment of urgency, that moment when someone said, "Find them now," wasn't just about identifying you. It was about activating you. It was about waking up something inside you that has been quiet for too long. Your ambition, your courage, your voice, your dreams, your identity, your clarity, all of it is returning, and when it does, your entire energy shifts, your opportunities shift, your relationships shift, your environment shifts, your future shifts. And now that you've reached this point, there's something you need to understand with absolute clarity. Nothing in your life has been random. Not the timing. Not the delays. Not the people who walked out. Not the moments that broke you. Not the moments that rebuilt you. Every piece, every shift, every change was part of a perfectly aligned sequence designed to bring you right here, to the edge of transformation, because you weren't meant to stay in the shadows of who you used to be. You weren't meant to stay trapped inside the doubts carved by your past. You weren't meant to keep replaying old chapters that were closed long ago. You were meant to rise into the person life has been sculpting you into. Even when you didn't see the process happening, that's why the message came now. Because you're in the final stretch of a transition you haven't fully understood yet. You've been shedding old versions of yourself without realizing it. You've been releasing things you once clung to. You've been outgrowing situations that no longer align with your spirit. You've been quietly evolving, even on the days you felt motionless. Growth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it feels like exhaustion. Sometimes it feels like frustration. Sometimes it feels like wanting more but not knowing how to reach it. Sometimes it feels like losing your old self and not recognizing the new one yet. But look at you, you didn't stop, you didn't collapse, you didn't give up on the idea that things could be better, even in the moments when you felt unheard, unsupported, unseen. You kept moving, and the universe pays attention to hearts like yours, hearts that bend but do not break, hearts that hurt but still choose hope, hearts that lose people but never lose compassion, hearts that walk through loneliness but never stop loving, hearts that fall but rise again with wisdom instead of bitterness. People with hearts like that are never ignored by destiny. That urgency, find them now, wasn't about danger, it was about recognition, it was about timing, it was about the universe saying, the person you've been waiting to become is ready to step forward. Because you're not meant to stay where you are. You're meant to cross into a chapter where your worth is understood, your voice is respected, your intuition is trusted, your dreams are supported, and your heart is no longer taken for granted. And yes, someone is looking for you, but not in the way the world assumes. Someone is looking for the person you're becoming, someone who aligns with your growth. Someone who recognizes your energy. Someone who values your mind, your presence, your courage, your vision. Someone who doesn't want to dim your light but walk alongside it, whether that someone is a partner, a mentor, an opportunity, a destiny-shifting connection. The universe is aligning it with precision. You don't need to chase what's meant for you. You only need to become the version of yourself who can receive it, the version who trusts, the version who acts, the version who doesn't shrink, the version who doesn't apologize for wanting more, the version who knows they're worthy of more. Because something extraordinary enters your life the moment you stop questioning whether you deserve extraordinary things. You're not at the end, you're at the beginning of alignment, the beginning of recognition, the beginning of elevation, the beginning of opportunities that match your frequency instead of draining it. That's why today feels different. That's why this message found you. That's why something in your spirit is awake right now, even if your mind is still trying to catch up. You are entering a chapter where you no longer walk blindly, you walk boldly, where you no longer wait passively, you move intentionally, where you no longer tolerate what harms you, you choose what grows you, where you no longer doubt your purpose, you embody it. Everything ahead of you carries more clarity, more alignment, more opportunity, more love, more abundance, more meaning than anything you've left behind. You are the person the message was meant for. You are the person the world is preparing to notice. You are the person about to step into a season that finally matches your heart, your effort, your resilience, your spirit. And when the universe said, "Find them now," it wasn't just alerting others, it was calling you back to yourself, to your strength, to your identity, to your destiny. This is your moment. This is your shift. This is your awakening. And nothing, absolutely nothing, can stop what's already on its way to you.